Welcome to Impact. I'm your host, Pamela Anchang. On today's show, we will examine the impact of American culture on immigrant marriages with my awesome guest, Miss Monalisa Okojie, CEO of Nehita Designs. She's a philanthropist and founder of Upward African Woman. We also have Miss Sneh Misra, founder of La La Land Development, and she's the chairwoman of FOSAAC, Friends of the Asian American Communities. We also have, from the American perspective, singer, composer, and the mother of Afrobeat, Miss Sandra Izsadore. And also, we're going to throw in an interesting guest, my spouse, Mr. Charles Anchang, CEO of the Immigrant magazine, who will bring us some good thoughts on this. So stay tuned. It's going to be very exciting. Oh, hello, ladies. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Pamela. Thank you for having me here.
And that's Monalisa. And I have Miss Sneh.
Hello, Pam. Thank you for having me.
And I have the mother of Afrobeat, Miss Sandra Izsadore.
Well, thank you, Pamela. I'm glad to be here.
I know it was a little distant from the mic, but I'm sure our listeners can hear you very well.
Well, my voice carries.
And last but not least, my own hobby, Mr. Charles Anchang, Music Master Charles.
You called us all ladies. I said ladies and gentlemen.
You know, I forgot.
Okay.
You know, that's what the show is about today. We already started. Let's just hope, listeners, that after the show, I can go home with my husband. Right. Because I tell you, this show today is about immigrant marriages and how they survive abroad. And just coming to the station today, I was like, please, God, help me to get there, because GPS said, take the freeway, and Charles decided to take the streets. And so I was almost late. Got here really frazzled. So we need to discuss these things. Monalisa, please tell me about your experience living abroad with your husband. And do you ever encounter these kinds of situations, and how do you handle them?
Oh boy, if we want to talk about all the experiences I've encountered, it's going to take all day. But when my husband is driving, I just don't talk. Pamela, you need to learn. You're an African woman. You just, whatever he wants to do is fine. Just learn.
Really? I need to learn. So we just want to, let me defer to someone else. Sneh, you're from India. Tell me about your experience in a situation like this, especially here, because the men think we know too much because we live here.
Right. I agree with Monalisa. If I was in India, I would be doing the same thing. But since I was pretty much raised here,
yes,
I would keep talking, telling him you're doing it wrong. And I will hear it all the time. But it's okay. I got to give him peace of my mind.
That's right. And Charles, Charles, hold on. I didn't defer to you just yet, okay, Charles. Right, can you just hold on, please? Okay. Yes, now I'm talking to you, Charles. So this is the spirit. This is America, like immigrant women will say. This is America. So Charles, now you can talk.
You see why in America the divorce rate now is growing up very high for immigrant marriages, because the women get to speak up more than they're supposed to, which is sometimes tolerable, sometimes not. But we respect.
Well, Charles, ladies, and I didn't mean gentlemen, because I'm now talking to the ladies. Ladies, Mona and Sneh, we all come from cultures where the status of men is more elevated than their female counterparts, right? So do you think marriage dynamics would be different if you were back home? Like the way you live here, is it a little different than you would have been living back home, Mona?
I would say a couple of years ago, it would have been different. Like 10, 20 years ago. I've been here for 21 years. And 21 years ago, there are certain things that you couldn't do or you couldn't say to your husbands. But going back frequently, I realized that a lot of things have changed. The cultures that I grew up with is totally different from what they're practicing right now. I mean, the men are always known to be the providers.
Yes.
The women were dependent on them for literally everything. You know, the woman was meant to be the homemaker. And being a homemaker, she can work, but she'll spend more time at home and she'll make less money.
Yes.
But the dynamics of everything has changed.
So is that back home or here, or is it both? Isn't there a slight difference, though? Because if the women are also providers, my impression and growing up in Cameroon was that regardless of women that were even ministers in the government, there's a certain way that a woman was allowed to participate in even conversation or interaction with men. It's a little different from the way we interact here.
True. But again, going back to what I said, it's changed. It's totally changed. Yeah.
In Nigeria?
The man is talking, the woman is talking.
Oh, really?
You know, some women are working harder than the men, and the men are okay with women being the providers. You know, and those are one of the issues that usually cause the marriage breakup or a lot of tension at home, because it's like, don't talk to me, I'm making money too. You
Okay, so
know?
economics dictate the pocket, the
Economics
outcome,
does.
right?
True, yes.
That's
yes.
very interesting. Sneh, I have to defer to you. Do you want to say something on that before I ask my question?
Sure.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with
Monalisa.
Monalisa because we also have to face the same issues. But even having the education, being educated, we are still in India, still controlled by men,
Yeah.
even living here or living back. We still have to do outside work along with the housework, taking
Yes.
care of the kids, and expected to keep our mouth shut and not be able to say a lot of things in public. The image we have to put, or the facade, that we are perfect couples.
Yes.
And he treats us like we're the best lady of the. And but when we get home, it's totally the different.
Absolutely. Now,
I don't know if everybody feels that, but we still do.
Yeah, I think it maybe, well, maybe Charles chime in on this. Is it depending on the culture, the countries and regions, do you think?
I think it's the maturity of gender equality when it comes to male and female. And I think when you look at it, contrary to what most people think, in Africa, women usually lead. They've been leading for a long time, but in the back end.
Yeah.
And so the facade is that the man is leading, but whereas everything usually is run in the home by the mother. But as you said rightly, we make it seem as if the man is ruling all the time. Then when we come to America, there's that conflict where you come to America, you have that false impression that you want to keep that African culture, which is not quite what it is. The culture of being a dominant male in the home. But here, the roles are kind of balanced because both parties get to work, and both parties get to contribute sometimes. And sometimes the female is more empowered financially than the male.
Yes.
And so the challenge now becomes, how do you then deal with it?
Yes. So, Sneh, you want to say something?
Yep. I think mostly that I have faced or seen, because we both are professionals and academic wise. So there's a little, I don't know if it is an ego that men have, or we as a woman. I think women usually don't have that much ego as a man does, or we as an Indian woman put them first and put ourselves back. It's probably because of the culture or the way we are raised, that, let the men lead, do this. Even though you're professional, you still have to back off.
Sneh, you make a very important point, because I know women back home and even here who address their husbands with titles of respect.
Yeah.
They wouldn't just call their husband Charles.
Yeah.
Yes.
It would be some title. Have you experienced that?
Yes.
So, hey, if this is your first time visiting Team TV channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button here below and ring the notification bell so you will be notified when we post new content. So, Sneh, I have a question for you. I read a study that said that regardless of national origin amongst immigrants, there's less divorce amongst immigrants. However, the divorce rate goes up when education is a factor. So more homes where the women are more educated, that's where you see the higher incidence of divorce. Why do you think that's the case? Because the less educated, the better the marriage. Is that what it is?
I will agree with this, because when you have higher education, you are bound to get out from your comfort zone. As a woman and a man, men were always given the right from the beginning to go college, go get the further education so they can be the bread earner, where women were not. Back home I'm talking about, and even here too. And once we started having education, we were able to go higher. We were able to get out of home, go, meet different environment, have financially feel that we are strong, we can do better. And we try to hold the homes together. But because it becomes like equal, I'm doing as much as work you are, so are, but now we feel a little bit power that, yes, we can afford to live on our own.
Yes.
We are not 100% bound by you. Although we want to take care of you, be there for you, as long as you give us the respect, because respect is what we lack as a husband and wife. There's 5-7 things, but I think honesty and respect. If woman cannot have it, it's harder for her to stay in the same situation and be in the marriage because she's entitled to speak.
Yes.
Just because she has the power of, she feels that she can just survive on her own. That's the reason I think most of the divorces are happening,
Yes.
because less tolerance of putting it up.
Mona, I think you will not tolerate disrespect.
No, and I don't think any woman should.
Yeah. So, Charles, quick question for you. What do you think, why do you think there'll be a higher incidence of divorce? Is it that the men are insecure when they're out here and want a traditional wife like back home?
To some extent, that might be a reason. To some extent, why? Because the male ego gets a little more complex if you come from a culture whereas you've been taught to be dominant as a male in the home.
Yes.
And then you grow up, you come to America where they are more advanced in human rights.
Yes.
And the female energy is equally important in the home as the male. And the female does have the capacity to, she has the rights, equal rights as the male, and sometimes even more in the U.S.
Yes.
To call on the police on you if you do the wrong, if you make the wrong moves. You know, so sometimes in these other cultures, some men are even allowed to beat their wives and slap their wives, which is
Yes.
not happening here. It's not tolerant here.
Yes.
So it's not tolerable here. So I think with the more education, some complex males have that issue, trying to deal with the more educated and more balanced woman. But if you're more educated, find a much more balanced husband as well. So the two of you can relate at the same level and actually be able to keep the marriage together.
Yeah. So as a male, do you envy your counterparts back home?
It depends. I don't envy from the negative side. I don't envy those.
And what would that be? What would be the negative
The negative
side?
is where the man feels that he is the all and all in the house.
He's the king.
That the woman is a subordinate to him, and that the woman's place is sometimes in the kitchen. But
Yes.
whereas there are also other males in Africa that are very supportive. Like I
Correct.
grew up with my
That's
father.
true.
My father was not that type of a man. He respected his wife to the best of his capacity.
Yes.
And he treated the family as a unit, and he did not abuse
Yes.
his wife. So I grew up with that in that environment. So it's a different. So those males that do respect their wives in Africa, I don't envy them because they're building the same family as I'm building out
Yeah.
here.
So, Mona, question for you, because you are such an independent woman. In fact, all the women on this panel are so educated. Sneh is an engineer, owns her own company. You are a designer, own and run your own company. Gender roles. Who cooks? Who cleans? Does it matter out here compared to back home?
To an extent, for me, based on my background, it matters. I cook, I clean, and I make the kids do it with me. My husband is really not supposed to do those things, but in this culture, he gets to do it sometimes. And then the few times where he wouldn't do it, I'd start getting mad, like, really?
Really? You're not going
Who
to get
did you
up?
leave it for? You know?
But why did you
I
say he's not supposed to? You said he's not
I
supposed
said, that's
to.
what I said, based on my background.
Okay, he shouldn't.
Based on
I
my
hear you.
background.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, you need to give them a leeway to be the man in the house, to feel that, you know.
Yes. Yeah, I wonder what man in the house means. Sneh, what is man in the house? Are we contradicting ourselves? Are we women giving the men the upper hand and then blaming them?
Yeah, no, I think in this, yes, the environment we're living in, and if both men, wife and husband are working,
Yes.
they should have, but it's not.
Right.
Should have 50-50. You know, if you're talking about salary, yes, we are bringing 50-50 on
Yes.
the table. And if you're talking about raising the kids, 50-50. We should do
Yes.
that too.
Yes.
And if we're talking about taking care of the chores of the house, should be 50-50 because we leave 9-to-5 jobs.
Correct.
Sinead, I disagree.
Why?
I don't believe so. I think fairness is not a very fairness is not a very good measure. You do what you do best.
Yes.
See, if the man is good at maybe barbecue, okay, he might do barbecue more. If the man is good at maybe cutting grass, he might be do that more. The wife might be better at nurturing the kids and cooking sometimes more. And sometimes it falls a little more on the women. But anyway, the women are stronger. The women live longer and the men die younger.
Say it's full, Charles.
Okay, I do agree with him, but the thing, this is the reason we are having a lot of conversation and difficulties.
Yes.
In marriages, and because we also feel that when we come home we're tired as much as you are. We go do the groceries. I'm sorry to say these, but I get off work, go get groceries. I love my husband, I love my kids, I love everybody, but when I come home, I still have to put in the refrigerator. I still have to cook. I still have to wash. We don't have maids here.
Yes.
We don't sometimes have to blame God for that.
But on the other hand,
but women are stronger.
True, I agree with you. But
sorry,
at the same times, where men will come home, honey, I worked all day. They'll sit down with, whatever they like to drink and
watch the
TV.
NFL.
NFL,
News.
TV, and still we're working. So we get frustrated inside, but
Sure.
we can't say anything to them because we're not supposed to.
Yeah, but
Mona.
Pamela, I just want to say something. Like, coming from my background in
Yes.
Nigeria, the women really don't do much.
Because they
They
have
sit
maids.
down and instruct people, okay, cut the tomatoes, put
Yes.
it in the pot, I'm coming, I'll just
That's
go there,
true.
look at it, turn it a little bit, and I'm done.
Yes.
And then the maid has to set the table, serve the food, and I just sit there and start having a conversation with my husband. So we, from that background, we really did not learn how to do so many things. So coming here is a struggle.
Well, for some.
Yeah.
And I have to say, though, because we talk about women that have enterprises, but not all women have enterprises. And I think that the women who are stay-at-home moms should get as much respect because
Definitely.
try staying at home with your 2-year-old all day.
Yes.
And then if someone comes home and feels like you've been home all day doing nothing, that's a slap in the face. Don't you agree, Charles? What do you think in terms of that?
You see, some of these things you might have to question the creator. You see,
Oh, gosh.
the human beings come through women. Women are actually stronger than men, in my perception of it.
All right,
women
Charles.
can birth a human being. They are stronger. Men are not so strong. They are perceived strong, but they are not as strong as we.
Then they should
see.
let us
Women-
take the lead. They should let
there you
us
go.
do
Maybe that's something we should look into.
Yeah, and put yourself a little behind
Yeah.
and support her. Like we as a woman support men from the back. To make them go further, make them be
Yeah.
successful, make them known in the world. They should do that to us too.
We think
Okay.
and we can give babies, and that's as much as we. That's a lot from a man. That's
Okay,
a lot.
Charles. I think on that note, we're going to call this show right now. We have to adjourn and continue. But I can say this. I think immigrant women, especially,
Yeah.
you have raised your husbands like you have raised your children. So if your husband doesn't go to the kitchen, that's your fault. Because I have girlfriends whose husbands cook and they don't cook. Their husband understands my wife can't cook. And they're immigrants. But you're telling me that you have to go to the kitchen and blah, blah, blah. You don't have to. This is
True.
America.
I
We
have
might start
tried.
trouble.
They mess up the kitchen. They don't.
I know.
Well-
Every time it's more double work for me.
So stop
Exactly.
it.
So-
Teach him a thing or two, just like you raise your kids, raise your husbands. Charles, we're gonna go home together. So you just said I might start trouble. I'm not gonna try. I'm not starting trouble. I'm trying to clarify.
Exactly.
So thank you so much. That was a riveting conversation, and I'm sure we're gonna get a lot of feedback. Ladies who are listening, you heard it all. So do what you gotta do. And we will now bring in some American perspective through the lens of a woman who has observed marriage life in Africa and as American. This is Impact on KPFK 90.7 FM. I'm your host, Pamela Anchang. Thanks for watching today's video. For more Team TV videos about immigrant lifestyles, click on the subscribe button here below and ring the notification bell so you will be notified when we upload new content. We upload new content every single week. See you next time on Team TV.